So hello everybody and welcome to our Aging with Expectation session today. And I'm very grateful to welcome Reverend Dr. Stephen Koski joining us today all the way online, but from Bend, Oregon in the USA. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
And today's, before we start, I would like to just acknowledge our country and say that the Cairnmillar Institute acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, and we pay our respects to elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of the communities who may be here or listening this content today. We extend this respect to all Indigenous peoples from around the world and to any First Nations people who come across the material. So today's conversation, Stephen, is about showing up and being a peaceful presence in what's difficult times. And we don't have to read the papers very far in to find out that, people are struggling on all different sorts of levels. And, one thing that I remember when I was having a chat to my mum, she rang me some time ago, and she talked about how she wanted to go and visit a neighbour, that their husband had sadly passed away a few weeks before. And she said, I want to go around and say hello, but I don't know what to say. So she hadn't made that phone call or walked up to next door to sort of say hello. So I said to her, perhaps you don't need to say anything. Perhaps just go there, knock on the door and say, look, I'm here. I'm unsure what to say. Can I do anything to help? And the woman embraced her with open arms. And despite her husband having one of the most popular attended funerals in the small town, no one had actually seen her in that 2 to 3 weeks. And I just wonder how many other people around her in her social world also felt a bit intimidated, like, I don't know what to say. What can I say that's perfect? What can I say that's going to make you feel better? And it actually creates a barrier to people just saying hello. So what's your experience in this? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is such a common experience. And I often say, you don't have to be profound, just be present. In fact, your awkward presence, even if you don't know what words to say or what to do, just your presence itself can be just extraordinarily healing. I read something recently that really stopped me in my tracks, where it said that when someone is terminally ill or someone's dying, or actually, quite frankly, if someone is going through a mental health crisis, they only spend 5% of their time with a medical expert or with a medical practitioner. So think about that. Only 5% of their time is spent with a professional. But that's where all our focus goes. That's what we think is most important. And it just really stunned me because then I began to think about, well, what about the 95%? And the 95% is family, friends, community. And it made me realize that the role that each of us have, whether we're a family member, whether we're a friend, whether we're a neighbor, the role that each of us can play in showing up, in being present. It may not solve the problem or fix the problem, but it can be incredibly healing. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And to you, what does having that presence or that peaceful presence, what does that look like to you? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think in many ways, to me, it means not turning away. It means you don't have to be the hero in someone else's story. Meaning you don't have to have the answer, you don't have to have the solution, you don't have to have the right words to say. So you don't have to be the hero in someone's story, a hero in their suffering, but you can be a safe harbor in the storm. You can be a safe place where they can be vulnerable, where they can be present in their own suffering. And that's really what the word compassion means. I mean, compassion, we often think is soft and sentimental, when in actual fact, I think compassion has backbone. I think compassion is fierce. And compassion literally means, the word literally means to suffer with someone. So I think a peaceful presence is just someone who is just willing to be there, who is choosing not to turn away, choosing not to harden, choosing not to numb, but to be there in the midst of it. Again, not with advice, not with solutions, not trying to fix it, but just being present.
It's very much part of human nature, isn't it, to want to fix things or want to make them feel better, or do something or say something. But I guess what you're saying too is pointing out in reality, people will take their own time sometimes to get better. But to be able to do that with a significant other beside you, hanging onto your hand, or just someone there to make you a cup of tea, can make a huge difference to sort of start that road to healing.
Mm. And if you think about it, this desire that we have, because I think you're right. I think we all have this need to want to fix, to want to solve, to want to save, to want to offer advice. And that often comes from our own feelings of helplessness. But if we think about that desire to fix or to save or to solve, that's really centering ourselves in the story. That's really making the story about us rather than just simply being present with the other person. Parker Palmer, a beautiful writer, said the human soul doesn't want to be fixed, doesn't want to be saved, doesn't want to be converted. The human soul simply desires to be witnessed. And I think that's part of what a peaceful presence is. Not solving someone's suffering, but being willing to be a witness to it.
Mhm. And in some ways, and building on what you're saying before, perhaps it just does take a bit of courage to be perhaps a silent or peaceful person sitting beside somebody. And I mentioned before about making a cup of tea, but it's such a simple act. But again, it's showing compassion for the other person, isn't it? And might seem really simple. But when people are distressed, sometimes they forget to eat and drink, and those really basic physical needs they have become really important. And it's kind of related to my regional upbringing, I guess, because when something would happen in a small country town, what do people do? They cook a casserole and leave it on your front doorstep. And it's actually such a lovely, healing, considerate thing to do at a time when people may not feel like cooking. And all those, it's the simple things that sort of really, an assistance with those that can be really helpful to people.
Yeah, I think it's really those simple rituals. As you said, it might be the casserole,
Mm,
um, or it just might be the text on the phone that says, "I'm thinking about you. You don't need to respond.
mm,
Don't feel any pressure to respond. I just want you to know I'm thinking about you and I'm here."
mm.
I think those simple things are should never be underestimated. They're really just beautiful expressions of love.
Yeah. I remember sometimes talking to people, and one of the complications that they might have to adjusting to their difficult times is people saying to them things like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll feel better soon," or "In a couple of weeks' time, you'll sleep better and all will be good. Go out and get some exercise and you'll feel better." What's your thoughts around that? Because there's an element of honesty, I think, that's important here.
I completely agree because really, in telling someone, I call those, just those pious platitudes. That those pious platitudes are actually really about making yourself feel better because you're uncomfortable.
Mm,
You're uncomfortable with somebody else's discomfort. So one of the ways that we deal with our own sense of being uncomfortable is try to offer these pious platitudes to make them feel better. And I think you're right. I think authenticity and honesty is what's most helpful. Not these shallow. It's all going to be okay. I mean, we don't know that. Uh,
no.
I mean,
And
that's.
if
Go ahead.
Yeah, and everybody's on their own journey. So what I experience will be different to what you experience, and it is very individual because of that. So So I think that the platitudes or the pious platitudes aren't always very helpful, but you can still acknowledge and say, like, and reflect that this is really difficult. And in time, hopefully you'll start to feel a little bit better. Sometimes I talk about things being this bad right now in the moment, but in time it shrinks a little bit and it's not in your head 24/7. Then it shrinks a little bit more and a little bit more. But what that looks like is different for everybody, isn't it?
I think one of the most beautiful expressions that I saw, illustrations, was of grief. And if you imagine you're experiencing grief, and I think it could be grief, it could be trauma, it could be a mental health crisis, doesn't matter what it is. But if you imagine a big ball, a big black ball, and this big black ball um, fills the entire jar. So you're consumed by it. Then the next slide is the same big black ball. So the grief, the trauma, the mental health crisis may not have reduced, but the jar is a little bit bigger. And then the next slide, the jar is just a little bit bigger. And the next slide, the jar is even bigger. So it's not this idea that, grief, you'll get over it. It'll all be okay one day. You'll be fine. Well, the grief actually will still be a very important, real part of your story. Um, it will probably always be part of your story. But you, as a container to hold that grief, you can become larger. You can learn to carry that grief in a different way. It's not the pious, well, you'll get over this. Well, there is some grief, some trauma, even some mental health crisis that you'll never get over because it's a significant part of your story. But you can learn to tell the story different. You can learn to hold the story in a different way. You can, with the support of others, knowing that you're not alone because someone showed up and showed up awkwardly, didn't know what to say. I remember I was going through a particular mental health crisis, and a friend of mine showed up with a pizza, knocked on the door. I didn't ask him to come, and in fact, I was at a particular place where I kind of isolated myself. He showed up with a pizza. He came in, asked if he could come in, and I said, sure. I think in 90 minutes, 5 words might have been said. We ate this pizza together in silence. But the fact he was there, he just showed up. And it was awkward, and he was awkward, and he didn't know what to say. But I didn't feel alone. And somehow in that, I then was able to carry the weight that I was carrying a little bit better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that story too. I think it really shows, doesn't it, what you said earlier about the power of someone's compassion and their presence and things. So I think it's really important. I wonder sometimes when I was originally doing some of my health professional training, and they said to me, it's not professional to cry and sort of show too much emotion myself, and it's important to sort of deal with the issues and things. And sometimes when I heard people's sad stories, I did shed a tear or two, but I was actually quite surprised that sometimes people even thanked me for being emotion and showing me emotion. But what's that like in your world? Like, what are your thoughts around showing emotion as someone who's wanting to genuinely care for somebody who's going through a difficult time?
Yeah, it's such an important point. I mean, I think there's a huge difference between, again, when you make the story about yourself,
Mm.
when you make yourself the hero of the story. And sometimes we can show our emotions in such a way that we take the attention away from the person that we're there to be with and we make it about us. But I think more often than not, if we're genuinely moved, um, our tears, I think the shortest distance between two people are the words, yeah, me too. Um, I often say that it's not our strength that unites us. we work so hard to show one another, to put on this positive front, this strong front that we have it all together. It's not our strength that unites us. What really connects us is our vulnerability. I mean, the one thing we probably most share in common are the salty taste of our own tears.
Mm.
So to be genuinely moved, I had another story, again, the same mental health crisis. Um, but a dear friend visited, and tears were streaming down my face. Again, no words were spoken. She reached across and just touched my tears and then put her finger down her own cheek. And I was seeing a therapist at the time, and nothing against the therapist that I was seeing. And as a therapist myself, I have a lot, a lot of faith and a lot of good feelings about therapists. But that just simple gesture of touching my tears and taking my tears and touching her own cheek with my tears was one of the most healing moments that I've ever experienced in my life.
What a very special moment. Yeah, very, very special and symbolic, isn't it, of just that person just showing that they're connecting with you in the moment. So it's incredible, really, how profound, being distressed can be. But at the same time, it's the simple little things that probably, what we've been talking about today, that really help people. Sometimes emotion does funny things to people, though, too. Sometimes we might intend to be very serious, and then someone cracks a joke, and there's laughter. So,
Yeah.
the emotion can be triggered, but the way that we express it can be quite an individual thing too. But I think that's okay in some situations, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more than okay. I mean, so many situations where I've been with people, particularly if someone's seriously ill. Someone's seriously ill, even around them, there's pills, there's this, there's that, everything's so heavy and serious. I've spoken to so many people who just have appreciated somebody who tells a joke, or somebody who just finds a light, or just brings a lightness to the moment, because it kind of reminds you that you are not your illness, or you are not whatever crisis that is taking place. You are still the human being that I know and that I love. And I think particularly humor and joy can remind people that the illness or the trauma or the difficult experience we're going through, is not our whole being. It's just part of our life at this particular moment. I often think of it. Uh, if you think of a stained glass window with different panes of glass, and sometimes when there's an illness, or when there's a trauma, or when there's a mental health crisis, it's like one of the panes of glass becomes darkened. And what we often do is we want to see through that darkened pane of glass. So we put our nose against the pane of glass and we try to see through it. But when we put our nose to the pane of glass, everything becomes dark. We no longer see or experience the light that is shining through the other panes of glass. And then sometimes when you have someone, a friend or a family member, somebody who cares for you, to help you kind of take a step back and helps you notice, whether that's taking somebody for a walk, along the river, whether that's reading someone a story, or taking them to a movie, or whatever it happens to be, to help them to notice that the sun is still shining through these other panes of glass. It doesn't deny the reality of the suffering. It doesn't deny or minimize the significance of the dark pane of glass. But when you allow yourself to take in the sunlight coming from the other panes of glass, it helps you experience the dark pane of glass, I think, differently. A friend of mine was uh, dying of cancer, and he said something so amazingly beautiful. He said, Stephen, this cancer doesn't make sunsets any less beautiful. So let's keep enjoying these sunsets. This cancer doesn't make my love and my care for you any less real. So let's keep our friendship going. So I think it is important.
That's lovely. That's a beautiful saying. And I think it might be a nice point to sort of finish today on this point. But in summary, if you can help me, Stephen, what we covered today, I think, you know, the example I provided at the start about my mother's friend or neighbour from up the road, and then your own experiences too, really highlighted the importance that we just need to be present for people. And being present means we just need to listen, and sometimes those basic physical needs, a cup of tea, and you mentioned, you know, going for a walk, just trying to encourage people to do some of the normal things is really important, as well as being authentic and just being honest.
Yeah.
And our expression of emotion, I think you mentioned too, like from your experience, it was actually okay.
Yeah. And remembering again, I think there's such a powerful illustration to know that, if you're seriously ill, if you're dying, a mental health crisis, or just a trauma or crisis of any kind, more than likely only 5% of your time will be spent with a professional.
Mm.
95% of your time will be spent with family, friends, community. So it's really family, friends, and community have the vital role to play. You have the vital role to play in healing. And sometimes that healing is knowing that you don't have to be the hero of somebody's story. Just be that safe harbor. Just show up. Show up awkwardly. I think I think showing up awkwardly and consistently is far more important than showing up perfectly. So you don't have to have the solution. Um, your heart, your ears willing to listen, and just your genuine care is profoundly healing.
Thank you, Stephen. That's a really good note to end on. And I might just sort of say to our audience out there too, if you just need to take a breath right now, just breathe, just feel your feet on the ground, feeling grounded, and thank you for listening. We always like to know how we did, so please do. We appreciate any feedback. We've got Stephen's email address here on this slide, as well as my own. So if you've got any feedback regarding the session or any future topics that you would like discussed as well, just please do let us know. And also, just so that you know, we are also very excited that the Big Tent is still moving forward. We're actually the Big Tent project is moving in a few different directions. We are now running Big Tent program. There's about 7 different sessions we're taking concurrently now. So we have quite a few staff who are trained in helping early childcare workers work with children and teach them to recognise trauma and help them in those early years. So if you feel welcome to donate to the Big Tent, and that would be very much appreciated. So thank you for watching. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us all the way from Bend, Oregon, and hearing your thoughts and pearls of wisdom. It's always very appreciated. So thank you very much for today.
Always such a gift to be with you.
Yep. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.